everyone. This is an update for one of the other projects I've been working on, and it again in Blender and Unreal, bringing one of my toy projects into somewhere between an animated short that we're trying to put together for it, and possibly a playable demo. And in trying to realize this stuff in a game world, and trying to bring over some of the aesthetics of the sort of toy that we toys I've been developing. We've got here's just sort of a mock-up of one of the little guys. Not the way that the toys actually look, because I sculpted those by hand, and trying to bring those into and style them in the right kind of way so we capture all of the essence of the characters, and make them movable and posable and stuff as toys, but also trying to make that work in the Unreal space. So here, pulled this up and give you a quick showcase of. Now this is just placeholder content for the most part. I'm using a low poly assets that are free through the Epic library, to try to sort of suppose some of the stuff. But I've got a little Assetsville village here, and a couple of the low poly assets, clouds and other things that I've just been using as the environment to sort of test this stuff in. And this here's our little the donut shop itself, that very similar to the drawings and stuff that I've done for the Dirtydozen donut. So Don's Donuts here is sort of just supposing in where in our game world things would be and whatnot. Again, this is just the placeholder assets for now, and then working up the mechanics and everything from that. So I added in a playable character and brought in that donut. There we go. Woo! Drop in. I like the idea of having the ability to see the whole landscape, all tiny until you realize that we actually land in at size, and so our little guy is actually to scale, approximate to what a donut would be in this little world, and then the perspective as well. I mean, my camera can right now clip below the orbit of the ground, instead of closing in on the character and helping the view sort of go up. Right now, those are the elements of play testing this, but we're getting an area like of visibility, and obviously we could go further up. It's just a matter of fine tuning the camera and also the camera angle, because we want to be able to make it playable for them to maneuver. In this, I've sort of tried to make it give you a sense of what it would be like if we're actually making it so that they have to maneuver around the people of the world and get about to do their nefarious business, and how would they go about navigating as smaller characters in a larger overall in a larger world. And then there's some little areas here where we can get a sense for what it'd be like for the character. I'll just do a quick adjustment for the sake of this demo. Bring the camera up and a little further away, and tilt it down a little bit so we can get a bit of a still, again, it's all just about fine-tuning these things and making it a little bit more accessible. So all right, so then once we've got our little guys in this world, and we're trying to make it so that they work to scale and movement and everything else. The other element that I've been trying to work on is getting this sort of aesthetic, the line quality, if you would, the rendering of the various 3D assets in this and other projects. I want to have the ability to control how things look, how they render out, to capture the essence of the sort of style that we want to carry over. So one of the other elements of this that I've been experimenting with, and that was in a test in Unreal 5, and this is in Unreal 4.27. Here, I was working on getting the 3D world as it exists in Unreal. It is fantastic for making things look realistic, and if you're trying to get or go for realism, it's got a lot of pre-bundled things just to make it really easy to get it there. But if you're trying to limit that, or you're trying to get it to render in a specific way, you have to get a very specific understanding of how things sort of peel apart and how they place together. So one of the things I've been messing around with, whoops, I got a little too close, are shaders that use the information that's around off the environment to create a bunch of different sort of effects in both the shaders themselves, to skin on to things to get a different sort of aesthetic on it, but also as a post-processing volume and as stacks for different aesthetics. The best way to explain this to folks who aren't actually working in this area, and they're just sort of looking at this as part of the just aesthetic of the narrative device that's there. This is your kind of chrome object, your glossy and matte combo object, and here I'm using one of these. An effect where I'm using information that is being broadcast by the viewport to grab information and bring it back in and loop out to create this to draw the hash lines or the cross hashing onto this object as a shader, but where to place it is being chosen by its directional shape, right? So that it's going to consistently draw these, paint these volumes of either tone or static onto these in combination. So here is a halftone pattern that it's painting onto the volumes using the same technique. So I'm essentially achieving a halftone pattern and a cross-hatching pattern that I have some kind of control over on an object volume, right? And then I took this and I brought it one step further in, here I'll show you, but for anyone who's actually interested in this, I'll happily put up a tutorial going into more detail about how it all works, because it's part of my exploration and learning process. So, but here I'm pairing in my samples of halftone patterns that I've used, and I'm aligning them to the world and attaching them to various things like the shadows or mapping around the object to create this sort of layered effect to get this post-process cell shader kind of quality. Here is an attempt at drawing in or painting in what is the line weights to go around the objects. So now everything within a certain distance inside the camera is being drawn on in a way that draws an outline. And we're giving, now it's not perfect in places, it just doesn't know how to behave itself, but it's trying to do its best to draw what I'm asking it to do over top of everything, right? So all those details are still there, right? All the halftone patterns there and everything has just been asked to push the contrast up, to take out a lot of the glossiness of things, to neutralize a lot of stuff, to pump up the line weights around everything, and then bring all of that aesthetic sort of in here. Try and get cell shader and outline in place, and then take it one step further and redraw over top and use the light now to push our mid-tone quality shadows and push the median point between your shadows, midtones, and highlights, and paint in halftone on those shaded areas so that we get that kind of manga-like quality, and that it will render it as we move around and as we pick up light, and then have a way of differentiating between objects that are foreground and background by having a sort of stroke line that gets painted in place so that objects have their painted outline and then a stroke and then the background, and then a way to sort of thin out and thicken out those lines around the points where objects want to sort of taper off and have the halftone pattern follow, or the hash lines follow those volumes. So using everything in combination with each other to get this kind of an effect, and then utilizing the same kind of thing to here we go, here in game. So here we've got different kind of quality of character. The mannequin sort of more in tune with sort of the other comic and film projects that I've been working on. You get a sense of how the shadows and everything else will play, but how a character would end up rendering out inside this kind of scene. And for the most part, where there's no need for an extra stroke, there's no stroke in there, but when it wants to draw, it's drawing a pretty decent, I mean, for the effort put into developing it, I think it does a lot of what I want. There's obvious limitations to what can be done with it. It really doesn't necessarily play nicely with reflective surfaces, but you can get some neat effects out of it, and it doesn't necessarily play perfect with the screen because it does have a lot of jitter to it. But for still shots and for developing some of the comic stuff that we're wanting to do, being able to develop stills out of this and being able to get dynamic animations and then a lot of other sort of, Borderlands kind of quality of a combination of cell painted and stylized sort of look with all of the control that we would have in a playable world, but using this to create the light quality and on the way that the characters actually paint out, but then have the control over the way it draws into the scene, so that you can apply it with the foreground and background sort of thought to objects. So if we have like a hero object that's this guy's the background one that's not as significant as these that are intended to sort of pop out, so that you could have a row of less significant objects sort of just there behind the character that fall to the background because they've got an extra little bit of the shadow layer on it, so it pushes them the volumes into the background, and then a way to again how can we thin the lines out where we want to make the lines sort of completely disappear between volumes, and how can we make them thicker where we want them to sort of pop. So this was my little sort of test ground for the shaders on this particular occasion, and then I'll show you all of it in play. Oops. Get down here and I think that's the one volume I've got here. All right. Make this window a little bigger. So now that quality has painted over the entirety of the scene, and you can actually see the distant point at which I've controlled where the stop point is, so that the like stuff like the natural sky or zip tone sky or whatever wouldn't be affected by what's being painted here, but it dynamically has an understanding of how far away we want this particular set of aesthetics to paint itself onto the scene. And it's still rudimentary, it's still early days, but you can see our little guy, he's got a good outline to him, and you're getting a little bit more of a sense of what this would be like as a playable world, or as a backdrop for our little animated shorts, right? And add music, sound effects, and the overall sort of dialogue, volume of other things going on, and we got a pretty good thing going here. Still early days, but there's a lot of already fun interaction with the scale of the characters of the real world to the size of our little playable guys, and what happens when you're trying to maneuver around sort of big real world objects, and then obviously painting in the actual the rest of the world, the underground caverns, the other things that have to do with the whole story of the Dirty Dozen. That's going to be the fun part. But now a lot of the groundwork's been laid out to share a lot of this in a way that ongoing can be an enjoyable thing for everyone, but also something that we can hopefully bring some small playable experiences in there for some of the narratives as teasers as we build up towards initial release. So there we go. I hope that was enjoyable and at least somewhat understandable for those who aren't into Unreal and this kind of stuff, and just looking into the sort of story stuff that we're building. For anyone else who's interested in learning about this, happy to share any of the details about how I did any part of this, and where my resources were and everything. I'll try and put in my notes attached to my YouTube and whatnot. Thanks, and catch you later. Bye for now.